Hello and welcome to another update. In this one, I will be covering the whole front line, starting out in the south, where the Russian forces continue their attacks in the direction of Uledar, as well as Novomirailivka, Pobieda, Marinka, and to the north of Marinka. As for the Donetsk front, we see the Russian forces continue their attacks in the direction of Nevelsky, Pervomaiske, and to the north of Pervomaiske. So in these areas, it is the same situation as in the southern areas, as well as in Uledar and Novomirailivka, where the Russian forces have essentially given up on any offensives in this area, as the Ukrainian forces have heavily fortified these areas, as well as sent a lot of reinforcements to them. So the Ukrainians here have a great amount of troops, as well as significant defenses that the Russians have a hard time pushing through. That is why the Russian forces are now focusing on daily raids, where they try and prevent the Ukrainians from building up further troops and just try to slightly cut down on the amount of troops and amount of equipment they have standing there by using a lot of artillery strikes and raids on a daily basis to prevent any further buildup, as well as to cut down their military capabilities. Then we move on to the Avdiivka area, where fighting continues to the north of Vodiane in the direction of Severne, north of Opytne in the direction of Avdiivka, and in the Kamyanka area. So here the Russian forces are doing a similar strategy where they try to raid these areas and cut down the defenses. When this one they have a lot more strength than in the Donetsk area, as in these areas they are fighting through open fields, so it requires a lot more armored vehicles and so on, compared to these areas which are mostly within villages and residential areas, so there's a lot more infantry in these areas. But essentially the same strategy is in mind, a lot of raids and a lot of artillery strikes rather than anything else. Then we move on to the Bakhmut front, where the Russian forces continue their attacks in the direction of Ivanivske, as well as within Bakhmut itself, where the Russian forces here attack in the direction of the southwestern residential area, as they try to expand their zone of control within it, in the southern area by the stadium, as they try to gain control over the stadium, as well as the surrounding high-rise buildings and forest line. A bit further north to that, the Russian forces continue their attacks in this direction as they attempt to reach the Kovalska Street and push down to cut off the Ukrainian forces here to the south. The fighting also continues by the central marketplace, as the Russian forces want to capture everything to the north and reach the rail lines in this whole area, which will allow them to then push further southwards and cut off the Ukrainian forces here in the south. At the same time, fighting continues by the state police station, as the Russian forces attempt here to reach the rail lines and push northwards and southwards from this position. As for the northwestern parts, the Russian forces continue their attacks here in the northern section by the residential areas, as well as here in the western section, where they have broken through Rose Alley and are now fighting within the residential areas to the south of the Rose Alley. As for the Khomove area, fighting here continues in the direction of Khomove, as the Russian forces attempt to gain better positions by the road, and with the current weather conditions, it is terrible weather to fight in, so neither side is making any progress on the whole flank. It is to the point that there's been no fighting reported anywhere other than in the area between Kryhorivka and Oryhove-Vasilivka, by the E40 highway, and by Khomove. All the other places are silent, except for the constant artillery strikes between the two positions. Then we move on to the Siversk-Kreminna front, where here the Russian forces continue their attacks on the whole front line, as they attack in the direction of Makiivka, in the direction of Nevske, west of Zhenopopivka, southwest of Zhenopopivka, west of Kreminna in the direction of Torske, southwest of Kreminna in the direction of the Serebryansky forest area in two directions, in the direction of Bilohorivka and in the direction of Verkhnokamianske. And again, the area here is the same similar tactic as to the Donetsk area, where they mainly focus on shelling and raids, as they don't want to do a full-scale offensive. They just want to cut down the Ukrainian forces in the area. And welcome back to another video. If you like my content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And if you want to support me, I've recently launched a Patreon where there are 2 tiers of membership, one for about $10, the other for about $25. There is a private community, exclusive content, and ad-free videos on the $10 version. The exclusive content will be in-depth videos weekly about the situation, about the geopolitical situation, and more general in-depth topics that I don't cover in my channel. And the $25 version will also include a exclusive live stream weekly, exclusively to these members, where I start off with a 30-minute or so presentation, after which I talk with the members, answer their questions, and so on, exclusively for the members. And both of these tiers have my videos that I upload on my channel, but ad-free. Please let me know what feedback you have in that regard. Thank you for watching, and let's get back to the video. As for from the Ukrainian perspective, they are just trying to stabilize the front line and push back the Russian forces who have advanced to create a proper defensive position, having some open fields to allow a buffer zone between the two sides, as well as push through the Kreminna forest area, the Serebryensky forest area, as they want to reach Kreminna with saboteurs and similar units that can cut down the supply routes and interrupt the supplies going through there, as well as push through the central area by Chnopopivka or Ploshenka, as they want to cut this road between Kreminna and Svatove. As for the Siversk area, the Ukrainian forces are here attempting to get a better position where they can push back the Russian forces from Verkhnoukamyansk and Bilohorivka. Here they have succeeded in pushing back the Russian forces from Bilohorivka, but they still want to push them back from this hill area here to the north of the village. In Bakhmut, the Ukrainians are just trying to hold back the Russian forces and set up a proper defensive line as they attempt to prevent an encirclement of the city, as well as try to hold the city at all costs, as they want to prevent a Russian strategic victory by Bakhmut, as this city is very well supplied from both the TO504 highway and the E40 highway, reaching to Sloviansk and Konstantinivka. So essentially, losing Bakhmut would be a loss of Siversk as well, as Russian forces would be able to reach Sloviansk through the E40 highway, cutting off Siversk from its supply routes, as well as putting Ukraine in a disfavorable position, on top of the PR victory for whoever manages to succeed in Bakhmut, as if the Ukrainians continue and manage to hold Bakhmut and cause enough casualties to the Russian forces, the Ukrainians would be able to hold Bakhmut, and that would live up to the promises that Zelensky sent all around the West, that Bakhmut will never fall. And from the Russian perspective, capturing Bakhmut would show that no matter how many forces Ukraine pours into a place, the Russian forces will manage to capture it, showing that the tips of the scale have turned. As for the Donetsk front, the Ukrainian forces are just building up forces here in preparation for any offensive that could possibly occur within the Donetsk region or by the Zaporizhia region, as the Ukrainians are planning an offensive with their Western built-up weapons, which would allow them to push through the Russian forces. And being able to hold the Donbas region is a step in that direction for the Ukrainian forces. And that is all for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.